God is at work in you, both to will and to work for his pleasure. Every so often, Hollywood has what they call a sleeper. And a sleeper is a movie that no one expects much of it. It's not intended or expected to do great box office business. Nobody's really noticing it. There's not a lot of publicity about it. And yet these movies, referred to as sleepers, somehow exceed all expectations. In 1981, there was such a movie. It was called Chariots of Fire. Chariots of Fire was a modest movie, went out without great notice in the press, and yet achieved a huge box office success. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, of which it won 4, including Best Picture of the Year, and also Best Original Score. And that score was used in the famous, iconic opening sequence of runners from Cambridge University running through the surf with the music which won the award playing in the background. In fact, so successful was Chariots of Fire that the studio that sponsored him, Paramount, which was almost going into bankruptcy, Paramount was saved by this movie and went on to live another day. But the story is fascinating. The story is the story of a runner, a world-class runner named Eric Liddell. He was a devout Scottish Presbyterian Christian. His passion was running, and he was due to enter the incoming class at Cambridge University. He was also slated to appear in the 1924 Olympics in Paris. He was that good of a runner. As the movie opens, Liddell's classmates are gathered together for their first session, their first opening freshman meeting in the chapel, and they are addressed by the headmaster of the school, who says words which set the tone for the movie. He says to them, "Examine yourselves. Let each of you discover where your true chance of greatness lies. Seize this chance, rejoice in it, and let no power or persuasion deter you in your task." Examine yourselves, let each of you discover where your true chance of greatness lies. The movie then switches to 5 years later. Eric Liddell has graduated from Cambridge, and he is set to compete in the 1924 Olympics in Paris. On the boat over from England, he discovers that his race, the 100-meter dash, his race is scheduled to be run on a Sunday. Now that's a huge problem for him, because as a highly devout Christian, he believes very, very strongly that he should not compete in athletics on the Lord's Day. He believes this so strongly that he announces to the world that he will not run on Sunday, even if it means losing his qualification. Makes headlines around the world, this runner of great principle. Great pressure is exerted against him. The British Olympic Committee meets with him to try to dissuade him otherwise. Prince of Wales, later King Edward VIII of England, is part of that meeting with that committee and also urges him in the name of the nation to put his principles aside just for this moment and run in that race. But Eric Liddell refuses out of principle. Suddenly, a solution is found. One of the runners on the team who has already competed and has won his gold medal is slated to compete on Thursday. And he says to Liddell and the committee, "Why don't you take my place on Thursday running the 400-meter race?" All of a sudden, there's a solution, and Liddell prepares to run on Thursday. He wins, and all ends well. But to me, the heart of the movie is a scene which appears earlier in the movie, a conversation with Liddell and his sister. Now, his sister doesn't understand Liddell's passion for running. She thinks this is of unimportance compared to serving the Lord in a very direct way, which in fact Liddell intends to do as a missionary to China. The sister Jenny thinks that he's wasting time and energy with what seems to her a trivial endeavor. They have a conversation, and Liddell says to her these words: "I believe that God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel God's pleasure. Not to run would be to dishonor God." Now, Liddell, as a devoted Christian, certainly knew his Bible. And in saying these words to his sister, I wonder whether he was quoting the passage from Philippians chapter 2, verse 13. God is at work in you, both to will and to work for his pleasure. We have talked 2 Sundays ago about gifts, about each person having been given a gift. We've mentioned the many times that St. Paul writes about the gifts of the Spirit. And I mentioned that passage from 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. As each has received a gift, use it for the common good. When Liddell says, "When I run, I feel God's good pleasure," I love that image of God looking down on Liddell and taking joy, taking pleasure in the fact that this is something he does well. This is something that gives him joy. This is something that uses a particular gift that God has given him. God made me fast, and when I run, I feel God's good pleasure. I'd like to ask you this morning, what might that be for you? What might that be, your special gift, the thing you do so well, the thing that gives you joy, the thing that gives you a sense that you are using a special gift that God gave you? Whatever this is, it may be something you're not even noticing. It may be something that's so much a part of you that you don't think of it as something separate from you. God made me fast, and when I run, I feel God's good pleasure. All of us have been given a gift. And one purpose of that gift is to give God good pleasure when he sees us using this to its best advantage. Amen.